Welcome back. As we discussed earlier, we would want the currency calculation service to be calling the currency exchange service. The currency exchange service will be returning the exchange value. So if I want to convert USD to INR, how much is the exchange value? So that's the thing which the currency exchange service would determine. And the currency calculation service would be using the currency exchange service to determine the value of one currency in another currency. How much is $55 and €100 worth in terms of rupees? That's the kind of work the currency calculation service would be doing. One of the things that we would be doing at a later point is we'll create multiple instances of currency exchange service. Right now we have one instance running on 8000, but at a later point in time what we'll do is we'll run one instance on 8000, another instance on 8001 and 8002 and so on. And we would want the currency calculation service to be talking to all these three instances. And we would want to be able to determine which instance of the currency exchange service that the currency calculation service is talking to. And to be able to determine that, what we'll do is we'll use the port as a distinguishing factor. So from every service in the currency exchange service, we will return the port back so that we know which server is responding back. Typically, this is not really a good practice. I'm changing this service definition to accommodate for the fact that I would want to send the port. But as far as your learning is concerned, this is a very good thing. It will make it very clear as to which server your response is coming back from. In this step, we will add a port to the currency exchange service response. So to be able to hold the port value, what I'll do is I'll have a new variable created in here. So I'll say private. A port is typically a int, so I'll say int port, and I'll not add it to the constructor, but I'll create a getter and setter for it. So generate getters and setters for port. I would want both of them to be generated. We have get port and set port. I don't want him down here. I'll add them to the end. Now I can set the port in here. So I can say, I can take this into the variable, exchange value, Alt Shift L, extract local variable. I can say exchange value dot set port and set the port. For now, we know it's running on 8000, so I can hard code it in. But the best practice is to pick up the port from the environment. Spring Boot provides something called environment from which we can actually get the port on which the application is running. So let's make use of that. So I'll call this environment. Let's make this private. Let's also make this auto wired. Let's try and organize the imports. So I would want to use Spring Framework core env environment. That's the interface I want to make use of. And inside the environment, there is a variable. Inside the environment, I would need to get a property. So get property, and the name of the property is local.server.port. The thing is, this would return a string value back. We created port as an integer value, so I would need to parse it. So integer.parse int and parse the port value. That's it. Let's format the code a little bit so that we can clearly see what's happening. I'll set the port down here. So what we are doing is we are taking the exchange value, setting the port. We are picking the port from the environment local server port and returning the exchange value back. Now when I hit the server again, let's refresh, and now you are seeing port 8000 come in. One of the things that we can do right now is I can try and run this in a different port. How do I run the currency exchange application on a different port? One of the ways is I can change the application.properties, right? I can go to the application properties and say 8000, or I can say 8001, whichever port I would want to run it on. But I would want, let's say, two instances of currency exchange service running at the same time. How do I do that? If I'm depending on the server port configuration which is present in here, I'll not be able to do that. So I would want to be able to externally set the server port. How do I do that? Let's now try and run the currency exchange service on port 8001. How do we do that? I can say right click, run as, go down to the bottom and click the run configurations. The other way you can get down there is by saying over here, click it and say run configurations. Over here, we already have a simple configuration for the currency service, exchange service application. This is using the default port. The default port is 8000. So I'll rename this. So this is currencies exchange service application, which is running on 8000. So I'm giving that name to it, apply, and I would right click it and say duplicate. So I'm duplicating the configuration, and I would want this to run the application on 8001. So if I run this right now, it would run on port 80. However, I would want to run this on port 8001. How do I do that? I can do that by passing a VM argument called server.port is equal to 8001. Whatever value we are passing in as the VM argument in here will override the application.properties configuration. So the 8001 will be used as the port to run this application on. What I'll do is apply. So now we have 8001 and now I can say run. This would launch up another instance of the currency exchange service. However, the port on which this will be launched is 8001. Now I can hit both the services right now. So localhost 8000, it would return port 8000. However, if I hit localhost 8001, let's see what would happen. You can see that the port is written back as 8001. So basically what we have done in this step is we added port to our service response. From now on, we will use this port to find out which instance of the currency exchange service we are getting a response from. We now have two instances of currency exchange applications running on port 8000 and 8001. Until the next step, bye bye.